You don't belong in this cabin! Show me your ticket now!
We have every right to be here.
The CEO ordered a single dad removed from the plane, until the pilot exposed his heroic past. The cabin door was still open when the woman in the navy suit pointed her finger at the man in seat 2A and said the words that would freeze the entire first-class cabin, "Get him off my plane. Now." Marcus Bell tightened his arm around his 6-year-old daughter, Zoe, and felt every eye on the aircraft turn toward them. He had done nothing wrong. He had simply asked, politely, if his daughter could keep the window shade up so she could watch the clouds, the same clouds her mother used to point out to her before the accident took her away 8 months ago. But Vivian Cross, CEO of Cross Aviation Holdings and the owner of the airline itself, had decided that a single father and his curly-haired little girl did not belong in her front cabin. If this story moves you, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet heroes among us, hit that like button, drop a comment below, share this with someone who needs it today, and subscribe to Kindness Corner so you never miss a story like this one. Marcus had boarded that flight the same way he boarded every flight since his wife's passing, exhausted, guarded, holding on to Zoe like she was the only solid thing left in his world. He worked nights at a warehouse to afford this one trip, a visit to Zoe's grandmother in another state, because Zoe needed family around her, needed laughter in a house that had gone quiet. He had saved for months for these 2 seats. He was not a wealthy man. He was not, by Vivian Cross's standards, a man who belonged in first class at all, and when she saw him in 2A instead of the seat she had wanted for her assistant, something cold and cruel in her decided he was an inconvenience to be erased. Zoe began to cry, not because she understood the cruelty in the woman's voice, but because she felt her father's arm tighten and his breath catch, and children always know before they understand. Marcus tried to explain, calmly, that he had purchased the tickets fair and square, that he wasn't trying to cause trouble, that his daughter had already lost so much and just wanted to sit by the window. Vivian wasn't listening. She snapped her fingers at the flight attendants and demanded security be called, demanded this man be walked off her aircraft in front of every passenger, in front of his own daughter, as though shame were a lesson he needed to learn. The passengers shifted uncomfortably. A businessman across the aisle lowered his newspaper. A young mother 2 rows back pulled her own child closer. Nobody said a word, until the cockpit door opened. Captain Daniel Reyes stepped out, still in uniform, his eyes moving from Vivian's pointed finger to Marcus's trembling daughter, and something in his face changed entirely. He asked, quietly but firmly, what was happening, and Vivian, emboldened by her title, repeated her demand as if it were obvious that a man like Marcus should be removed. But Captain Reyes didn't reach for his radio to call security. Instead, he looked directly at Marcus, studied his face for a long moment, and asked a question that stopped the entire cabin cold. "Are you Sergeant Marcus Bell? The one from the Holloway Bridge collapse?" The cabin went silent in a different way now. Marcus, embarrassed, nodded slowly and asked the captain to please not make a scene. But it was too late. Captain Reyes turned to the passengers and told them that 3 years earlier, this quiet man sitting in 2A had been an off-duty firefighter driving home when a bridge collapsed into the river below, sending a school bus full of children into the water. Marcus had dove in 7 times, pulling out 6 children and their teacher before the current became too strong for an 8th attempt, nearly losing his own life in the process. One of those children, the captain said, his voice thickening, had been his own niece. The cabin that had gone cold with judgment now filled with something else entirely, a hush of recognition, of shame, of awe. A few passengers began to clap. Vivian Cross, who moments earlier had stood tall with her finger extended in accusation, now stood frozen, her hand slowly lowering to her side as the weight of what she had almost done settled over her. She had looked at a grieving widower and his frightened daughter and seen only an obstacle to her comfort, never once imagining the courage folded quietly inside the man in the worn leather jacket. Captain Reyes personally escorted Marcus and Zoe to 2 empty seats in first class, knelt down to Zoe's eye level, and told her that her daddy was the bravest man he had ever met. Zoe, through her tears, finally smiled, and reached up to hold her father's hand as if she understood, in the way children sometimes do, that something important had just happened. Vivian Cross did not say another word for the rest of the flight. But she did something the crew would later say they'd never seen her do. She walked back, alone, and quietly apologized to Marcus, not as a CEO to a passenger, but as one human being ashamed before another. It didn't erase what she'd done, but it was a start, and sometimes a start is all forgiveness asks for. If this story touched your heart even a little, please don't scroll past without letting us know. Like this video, share it with someone who believes people deserve second chances, and leave a comment telling us what part moved you most. And before you go, we have one small request. Comment the words, second chances, below if you believe every person carries a story worth knowing before we judge them. Marcus Bell never wanted recognition. He wanted only to raise his daughter with the same quiet courage that once sent him diving into a collapsing river. But sometimes the world needs reminding that heroes don't announce themselves, they simply sit quietly in seat 2A, holding their daughter's hand, asking for nothing more than a little kindness.